When I started working for Ali Abdaal, he told me that his goal for our team was for everyone to grow so much that we left to start our own thing. What he couldn't tell me at the time was sometimes you have to break before you can grow. And that's exactly what happened to me. In January of 2024, I walked away from my dream job as head of socials for one of YouTube's biggest creators. For the 2.5 years before that, I had a good salary, amazing opportunities, and quite literally a front row seat to a multi-million-dollar YouTube business. Little Becky's absolute dream. But I ended up leaving without a backup plan. No viral business idea, no instant 70k month. Just a real gut feeling that I needed to make space for what was next. So this is my story of how I got the dream job, what I learned from Ali and the rest of my team, how I unfortunately lost myself in the process, and what I've learned coming out of it on the other side. If you're feeling lost in your career right now, I hope that this video can help you understand that you can always take back control. So, let's rewind to August 2021. I'm scrolling YouTube when I see a video from a creator that I've watched for a long time, Ali Abdaal, and he's hiring 8 people for his team. My first instinct was to send this video to my now ex-boyfriend and urge him to apply. I wasn't even going to bother. I didn't believe that I would get the role. But something kept nagging at me, and I found myself sat up at 11 p.m. on deadline night writing the script that the role asked for, and I honestly thought it would never go anywhere. It's a classic self-sabotage, right? You wait until the last minute, so when it doesn't turn out, you can blame it on the timing rather than on yourself. But plot twist, out of hundreds of applications, I was one of 4 people chosen to be Ali's YouTube scriptwriter. Now, my background wasn't your usual traditional creator team material. No university degree. I went straight into a social media for business apprenticeship and then ended up in web design agencies, PR and events for the next 7 years before I went freelance in lockdown, like a lot of people. But I'd always been drawn back to creating. I grew up with YouTube and ended up making my own videos for years. And then I pivoted into Twitch streaming in lockdown and turned that into my part-time income. There was this pattern. I kept gravitating back towards being a creator, but never really sticking to it. And this job felt like my shot at that creative, squiggly career that I always wanted. I would end up being in a business where I could be like a sponge and soak up everything I needed to learn about YouTube and socials. And I really just wanted to be part of something bigger than myself at this point. Not to sound cheesy, but those first few months were like Creator Disneyland. 8 people had joined the team at the same time, and we all came at it with so much energy. The best part about this time in the business was that you could kind of shape your own role and follow your interests. So I actually quickly moved from YouTube scriptwriter to community manager and ended up building Ali's study Discord to 10,000 people. Then when the opportunity came up to be head of content and look after the creative side of the business, so YouTube and all the socials, I pitched for the role and ended up getting that. But as you can imagine, there was a lot of change. We were basically building one of YouTube's first creator teams, and Ali was still figuring out what he wanted from the business. So a lot of projects got built and then stopped, and the team were figuring out what roles they fit best into. Every week looked very, very different. And honestly, my biggest regret from this time was not filming everything. I remember sitting down with a couple of my colleagues and talking about creating a vlog channel literally to the behind the scenes of being on the team. And we just obviously got swept up in everything and never did it, but I really wish I did. Eventually, after a few shifts around, at one point I was literally Ali's PA for a couple of weeks. Super random. I landed the role as head of social media, and this is where I stayed for the majority of my time on the team and where I made most of my mark. Now, head of social media is a little bit misleading because for most of this time I was a team of 1, obviously supported by the amazing full-time editors on the team, but I was writing and putting out 109 pieces of content across the 5 channels that I owned every single week. And here's the thing, this was all happening around YouTube. Ali's business was built around his YouTube channel, so this was the main focus and where most of the energy went. So while the YouTube team had a couple of weeks to craft every video, I was constantly feeding and engaging those 5 channels outside of YouTube. As you can imagine, the systems that I set up had to be very efficient and not take too much time away from anything else, and so it became a very systemized approach rather than being super creative. But don't get me wrong, I'm really proud of what I achieved in this time. I ended up growing those 5 accounts by 600K in 10 months. I worked on projects that literally got seen by millions of people. And a lot of the reels that I was putting out on Instagram at the time were hitting 400,000 views. And I got the privilege to work on the book launch that got Ali's book on the New York Times and Sunday Times bestseller lists. I was also a coach for the Part-Time YouTuber Academy. So every single week I would coach students on how to grow their social channels too. And honestly, this part of my job lit me up the absolute most. A lot of these students I still speak to on the regular today. But the absolute best part of being on the team was that the business was built around reflection and growth. We quite literally lived what we put out and preached online. In our quarterly sprints, we talked about our personal dreams as well as our business goals. And in everyday chats in the studio, we would end up encouraging each other to take on a side project or giving each other actual relationship advice. I mean, in the early days, me and a few of the others from the team, including our boss Angus, took the day off just to race from London to Cambridge to make a creative video and have fun. It felt like I was in a pressure cooker for growth, which is exactly what I needed at that time in my life, but also possibly the worst place to be in when you're slowly burning out and you're not realizing it. During my first 6 months at the job, I went through a breakup of a 5-year relationship. Now, I'm not going to go into the detail of that in this video, but as you can imagine, it flipped my life completely upside down. Now, one of my potentially quite toxic reactions to bad things happening in my life is throwing myself completely into my work, and that's what I did. When bad things happen, it feels like work is one of the only things within your control. So during this time, unfortunately, I let go of a lot of the things that made me happy. I stopped Twitch streaming, I stopped exercising, I stopped doing the hobbies that make me, me. I quite literally put everything that I had into Ali's team. So, as I mentioned, my role was looking after all the 5 platforms outside of YouTube. So we're looking at Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. But like I also mentioned, they were secondary to that main YouTube strategy. So I became really, really good at efficiency and making things work when we had time restraints or resource restraints. But I found after a while that there wasn't too much room to be super creative anymore. It was just about maintaining. Now, don't get me wrong, every piece of content we put out was world class. It had to be. But at moments, it did get to the point where I felt like I didn't have too much movement or growth in my role. Our team was and still is full of energized, highly motivated, highly talented people. And I felt really, really lucky to be in that environment. But being in that environment every day means that great work isn't good enough and you have to be exceptional. Basically, you're only as good as last week's performance. And after a couple of years, I found that the high expectations I was held to didn't match with the resources or the limitations of my role. And so the work that I loved so much, I started to feel really disconnected from. And that is when the symptoms started. I would wake up at 3 a.m. randomly with a bad nosebleed before a filming day. I'd get psoriasis flare-ups. I had an ear infection that actually lasted for 3 months before it went away and then came back again. I wasn't just mentally tired. My body was quite literally physically rejecting my entire situation. And here's the thing about putting all of your worth into basically one basket. When that doesn't start to pay off, everything feels like it's crumbling. Now, we'll come full circle on this point by the end of the video, but I highly recommend that you don't do this. It is so important to keep your sense of self, whether you're going after your dream job or not. We have to remember that your dream job is just like any other job. The honeymoon stage is super sweet and exciting, but eventually the cracks will start to show. And then you have to decide whether you're happy to make that work or not. Like I say, me and the role had grown apart. And it took me one conversation to realize it was time to move on. Now, if you're a fan of Ali, you'll remember that he went digital nomading around August, September of 2023. This was a massive change for the team. We were really, really used to working in London up to 3 days a week and then working from home the rest of the time. Working in person with Ali and the team was like one of the biggest perks of the job. Literally in our weekly leadership meetings, he would ask you personal questions about your relationships and your life and your goals and what you wanted to do outside of work. He was very, very interested in all of us. And like I said, the team was so motivated and talented that we all had our own things going on. And it was great to just have that space to discuss it. It made work not feel like work. But things changed. And another team member of mine and one of my best friends now, Alison, and I decided to go traveling together. and we were in Budapest, living there for a month, and we decided to go to Vienna for a day. We had spent the entire week working in separate rooms in our Airbnbs, getting things done. It was kind of crunch time leading up to the book, and we were having lunch, and I remember her asking me how I was feeling. And I remember it so clearly. I was in what I would describe as washing machine mode that week. I was just turning up, getting the things done, not checking in on how I was feeling about it. So I kind of brushed over it. But Alison had said to me, I'm really worried about you. She said, you have so many ideas for your life, but do you want to be the girl that ends up doing those things, or the one who says she's going to, but never does? And my instant response was, okay, I'm going to quit my job tomorrow. And I did. I called Angus the next day and I told him about my plan, or lack thereof, and him and Ali fully supported me in leaving the company. Now that sounds like a split decision, but it had been brewing for months. You have to remember that I started this job when I was 25 and I was approaching 28. I was single at the time and I was thinking about what I wanted my life to look like. And I basically thought I had 5 or 6 years of just experimentation with work until potentially my life became a little bit more serious. I think this feeling is really common amongst working women, and personally, I just wanted to take a chance on myself. I didn't know whether I would end up going back into full-time work really quickly, or building a company, or just taking a bit of an extended sabbatical to work it all out. I just needed to make the space to see what was ready to fill it. So Alison and I decided to travel. She was still at the company. I wasn't at this point, but we decided to go to New Zealand, Australia and Bali for the first 3 months of 2024. And our colleague and friend Barb ended up joining us for the last leg of the trip as well. Just before we left, I wrapped up my job, and a week after that, I got an offer for a really good role. It was as a COO of a startup in the UK. I had to decide between jumping into work straight away or giving myself that time off that I had promised myself, and I'd already booked my flights to New Zealand. So I chose wrong. I ended up working from 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. on more than the days that were promised for this company, and just slowly burning myself out more than before. Eventually I had to stop, and that wasn't until we moved on to Australia a month into our travels. Now, over the next year, other team members started to leave the company too, and they were posting about their successful first 10k or 70k months. While my old colleagues were sprinting into entrepreneurship, I was rebuilding at a very different pace. I chose to work part-time with creators that I absolutely admired, and the rest of the time was spent reading and journaling and quietly asking myself, what do you really want? And for a hot minute, I thought I'd made a massive mistake. Maybe I should have been more strategic and stayed in London and hustled harder and left with a backup plan. But here's what I slowly realised last year. Whilst me and my old colleagues had had very similar experiences in terms of the systems and the mindsets and the networks that we'd built, we'd also had different experiences too. I joined at a time when things were very messy. We were figuring things out, and sometimes pitches fell through. Whereas some of my colleagues joined at times when it was perfect for their role or their pitch and what they wanted to do. So while some of the team have left and launched into 5-figure months, and I'm so proud of them for doing so, I needed something really different. I needed recovery. I needed to honestly rebuild my confidence in my creativity again and figure out if I still wanted to do social media as a job. Which, spoiler, I did. That meant writing random fiction on a Wednesday, traveling without documenting it, and having conversations that weren't built around networking. Both of these paths are really successful in my eyes. Have I had 10k months in the past year? Yeah, I have. Have I also had months where I've earned nothing, very intentionally? Yes. I actually took the whole of June off last year to visit friends in different countries and just enjoy life for what it was, and I feel really lucky to have been able to do that. What has mattered to me most in the past year is the joy that I've felt from the work that I've had the opportunity to do, and also the habits that I've been able to build and the life that I've been able to live around my work. For the first time in a really long time, I have felt really aligned with who I am and what I want from life, and I absolutely owe that all to Ali Abdaal. In the midst of a job built around productivity, he taught me that life is not about work. It's actually about figuring out what you want and building the puzzle pieces around it. So yes, work, but also hobbies and habits and relationships and goals. All of these things fuel how you enjoy the journey of your life. So, what do I want you to take from this video as a whole? Firstly, dream jobs are not soulmates. They are relationships. Some of them will be long, some of them will be short. But what I want you to realise is you can be exceptional at something and enjoy it and still need to walk away. Secondly, the proximity to someone else's empire does not make it yours. I was successful at helping Ali build his vision, but I didn't actually build my own at the same time. Sometimes the most dangerous trap is being really, really good at the wrong thing or being on the wrong path. Third, there is no perfect time to make a big change. You need to trust your internal compass, even when other people think that it's broken. Lastly, here's how I measure success now, and it's very, very different to 2 years ago. Before taking on any project, here are the 3 things that I ask myself. Does this energize me or drain me? Am I building something that's mine, or am I just getting really, really good at someone else's vision? And if I do this for a year, will I be proud of the person it's turning me into? Success for me now is measured entirely by alignment. So here I am making videos again, not because I've figured everything out, but because I'm finally building something that's mine. And I'm actually building multiple projects at the moment. My company, Sociable, is on a mission to make social strategy accessible to anyone who wants to build a brand. I want part-time content creation to feel like you're being sociable with your friends rather than this hacky system that ends up burning you out. I'm also writing a sci-fi fiction series with an idea that's been brewing since I was a kid. And if I didn't take this leap, I wouldn't have had the space to come up with it. I'm also working on side projects with the love of my life, and we're using it to fuel our travels and also save for a house that we'll hopefully one day buy in this economy. And I'm protecting time every single week to play and create and just be there for the people that I love, which feels really good. Since leaving, I've been really lucky to work with dream creators like Ramit Sethi, Rupi from The Doctor's Kitchen, Tim Armu, and Ben from Recenter. And I've helped them tell stories that really, really matter. And maybe this is what this channel's all about, the slower, messier road to building something that you're proud of when you're not really sure what it might be yet. If you're in a job that looks really good and impressive on paper, but you're not feeling quite aligned with it, you're not crazy. You might just be ready for something different, and it doesn't matter if it takes you months or years to figure it out. Your next chapter doesn't have to make sense to anyone but you. Mic drop! Stay tuned because there's going to be more, okay? Bye.